Most people don't live in cages. They live in floor plans, invisible rules, pre-approved dreams, safe horizons. You were told the map was the world, but it isn't. The walls are subtle, woven into family expectations, school lessons, cultural scripts, religious dogmas, the silent rules of what's acceptable, respectable, believable. You never asked for these walls. You were born inside them. And because everyone else lives there too, they look normal. They feel natural. They feel safe. But here's the truth. Safety is the most dangerous prison because it convinces you not to leave. Think about it. The job you were told to want, the house you were told to build, the role you were told to play, none of it came from your deepest self. It was downloaded into you like a program, like a script, like a cage made of words, and the cruelest part, you could walk through them today, but most never do, because the moment you step to the edge, the moment you touch the wall, you feel fear. Not because you're in danger, but because your conditioning has been wired to scream. Don't go further, stay where it's safe. Stay inside the map. But the map is not the world. The walls are not the horizon. And, if you have the courage to walk beyond them, what looks like the end is only the beginning. So I'll ask you again. Will you grip the bars that aren't there? Or will you step through into the ocean of possibility that's been waiting all along? From the moment you opened your eyes as a child, your mind began absorbing, not as you soaked in the words of your parents, the rules of your culture, the fears of your teachers, the beliefs of your religion, the pictures painted by media. Before you learned to ask why, you were already told what to believe, what to ignore, what to fear, what to chase. And because you trusted the voices, so the first walls of your mind were built by others, brick by brick, word by word, fear by fear. You were handed stories disguised as truth. You are this. You can't do that. Stay in line. Play your role, and you believed them. Because everyone around you believed them too. The ordinary mind grows up thinking it's free, but it isn't. It's conditioned. Conditioned to accept the visible as the only real. Conditioned to worship certainty over curiosity. Conditioned to cling to identity as if it were permanent. And so most people live in borrowed programs. They chase dreams they didn't choose. They defend beliefs they never tested. They protect an image they didn't design, not because they are weak, but because no one told them the truth. The first frameworks of your mind were never yours. They were given to you, and what is given can be questioned. What is questioned can be rewritten. The spiritual thinker is not born different. They are born with the same fear. The only difference is this. At some point, they notice the walls. They stop mistaking the map for the world. They stop confusing safety with freedom. And they ask the one question most never dare to ask. What if none of this was mine? That question is the crack in the program, the first spark of awakening, the first key that unlocks the door. Imagine a river. Its banks are high, its current strong, its path predictable. Every traveler inside that river believes this is the only way forward. The water rushes them along, the edges keep them contained. The flow feels natural, inevitable. Safe that river is the ordinary mind. Inside it, you live by pre-approved scripts. You chase success defined by others. You measure yourself by rules you didn't write, and you call it life. But beyond the riverbanks lies something far greater. A vast, limitless ocean, endless, uncharted, alive. The ocean is awareness. It has no boundaries, no walls, no single current to confine you. It invites you to explore in every direction at once. It shows you truths the river could never contain. But here's the catch. To step into the ocean, you must first leave the river. You must step out of the current you were born into. And that is terrifying. Because the river offers certainty, and most people confuse certainty with safety, they would rather stay in the predictable current than risk being swallowed by the unknown. But what they don't see is this. The current is not freedom. It's captivity. It's the illusion of progress while circling the same loops. The ocean is not danger. It's truth. It's where paradox lives, where opposites meet, where infinite possibility breathes. The mystic, the spiritual thinker, is the one who dares to step out of the river. They feel the fear, yes, but they step anyway, and when they do, the walls dissolve. The horizon expands. The self begins to remember what it really is, because outside the current, there is no cage. There is only the ocean, and the ocean is you. Why do most people stay in the river? Because certainty feels safer than freedom. From childhood, you were taught to crave it. Yes or no, right or wrong, possible or impossible, true or false. And the ordinary mind clings to them, like a child holding a knight, light in the dark. But what happens when the light is taken away? When the answers no longer fit? When life shows you paradox, two opposite truths existing side by side, most people panic. They double down on their categories. They fight to keep the illusion intact, because paradox threatens the neat order they were taught to trust. But here's the secret. Reality doesn't obey your categories. It isn't confined to black or white. It breathes in the gray. It dances in contradiction. It reveals itself in paradox. The spiritual thinker understands this. They don't run from ambiguity. They welcome it. They sit with questions that don't have answers yet. They live in the tension between opposites, because they know that's where the truth hides. It feels dangerous at first. Your ego will scream, pick a side. But if you resist the urge, if you hold still in the storm of uncertainty, a doorway opens. You realize opposites aren't enemies. They are mirrors. They complete each other. Light only exists because of shadow. Beginning only exists because of ending. Self only exists because of other. This is why mystics, visionaries, and spiritual thinkers appear calm even in chaos. They aren't avoiding reality. They're holding both sides of it. They've learned to bend with paradox instead of breaking against it. Certainty feels safe, but it costs you growth. Paradox feels dangerous, but it sets you free. So the question becomes, will you keep clinging to categories? Or will you step into the living paradox where reality truly unfolds? Look around you. From the moment you could walk, you were shown the script. Success looks like this. Worth looks like that. Good people do this. Smart people believe that. And you followed. Not because you were weak, but because the spell was already in place before you could see it. Culture is a hypnotist. It whispers in 1,000 voices. Work harder. Earn more. Collect titles. Keep your head down. Don't question too much. You are rewarded when you obey. You are punished when you resist. And slowly, Without even realizing it, you begin to measure yourself by rules you never wrote. Think about the unquestioned beliefs you've inherited, that productivity equals worth, that wealth defines success, that your identity is something to defend, not dissolve. Do you see the trick? These ideas were not presented as opinions. They were presented as reality, and so you never thought to question them. But reality cannot be defined by culture. Culture is only an agreement, a collective dream passed down by generations. It looks solid, but it isn't. It's just a story repeated so many times that everyone forgot it was fiction. And here's the shocking part. Most people spend their entire lives serving that story. They sacrifice their spirit at the altar of appearances. They play roles that suffocate their true nature. They defend a mask as if it were their face. But the spiritual thinker, they notice the spell. They pause and ask, who benefits if I believe this? Who gains if I keep chasing what they told me to chase? That question cracks the illusion. Because the truth is this: your worth cannot be measured by money. Your success cannot be reduced to titles. Your identity is not a costume to be defended. All of those are borrowed garments, useful for a season, but not the essence of who you are. When you see through the cultural spell, something shifts. You stop running after borrowed goals. You stop obeying invisible rules. You stop protecting an image that was never yours to begin with. And for the first time, you breathe outside the script. They told you who you are before you ever asked. You are this gender. You are this nationality. You are this religion, this profession, this role in the and once labeled, you were encouraged to build your entire life around defending that label, to protect it, to fight for it, to never let it be questioned. That is the trap of identity. It feels solid, but it is only a mask. The ordinary mind believes the mask is permanent. It clings to the role. It says, "This is me," and then spends a lifetime afraid of losing it. But here's the truth the mystic discovers. Identity is not the self. Identity is a costume, a garment you wear for a time, useful in some seasons, but never the essence of who you are. Think about it. The child you once were is gone. The teenager you once embodied, the roles you played 5 years ago, no longer fit. If identity were permanent, you would still be them. But you aren't. The deeper self flows beneath every role. It wears masks, but is never confined by them. The spiritual thinker learns this. You can play the role without being trapped inside it. You can wear the costume without mistaking it for your skin. And when you realize this, something powerful happens. You are no longer obsessed with protecting an image. You stop defending your identity as if it were your life. You stop living to maintain appearances. Instead, you move fluidly through, not chained to the mask, but free to set it down when it no longer serves. The ordinary mind calls this instability. The mystic calls it freedom. Because the moment you see identity as a costume, you step into your true power, the ability to become anyone without ever losing yourself. There comes a moment when the story no longer holds. The script starts to flicker. The map you were given suddenly feels too small, and it terrifies you. Because if the map isn't real, then what is? This is the beginning of awakening, not light and bliss, but disorientation, confusion. the crumbling of everything you thought was certain. They feel the crack in the wall, and they run back to safety. They bury themselves in distraction. They cling tighter to beliefs, even when those beliefs are breaking. But the spiritual thinker does something different. They stop running. They sit with the crack. They lean into the crumble. They let the map dissolve. And in that terrifying silence, a deeper truth emerges. You realize that most of what you thought was you was actually borrowed. Beliefs handed down like family heirlooms. Rules etched into your mind before you could resist. Ideas you never examined, but lived as if they were law. And when you begin to ask the forbidden questions, where did this belief come from? Why do I think this is impossible? Who benefits if I keep obeying this? The walls begin to shake. The current of the river begins to lose its grip. The illusion begins to collapse. And yes, it feels like death, the death of certainty, the death of the false self, the death of the map. But what dies is not the truth. It's the cage. The map crumbles so the world can expand. The program dissolves so awareness can awaken. The self you thought you were dissolves, so the self you truly are can finally step forward. It is here, in the crumble, that you realize the truth. You were never the map. You were never the walls. You were never the script. You are the vastness they could never contain. When the map crumbles, most people panic. But a few rare souls discover something extraordinary. They don't collapse into nothingness. They are the mystic mind, the mind of the spiritual thinker. This mind is not either Feor, it is both Feyend. It is analytical and intuitive, precise and expansive, grounded in logic and alive in symbol. The ordinary mind splits its faculties, logic in one box, imagination in another. Emotion pushed to the side, it separates. It divides, it compartmentalizes. But the mystic mind breaks the walls between them. It allows insights to flow freely between all domains. A dream image in the night becomes a solution tested in the daylight. A symbol seen in nature sparks a breakthrough in human problems. An inner knowing meets outer evidence. And instead of clashing, they complete each other. The mystic walks in two worlds at once, the seen and the unseen, the measurable and the immeasurable, the rational and the symbolic. They are not anti-reason. They do not reject science. They integrate it, folding it into a larger truth where data and intuition work together instead of at war. This is why the mystic often feels out of place in the ordinary world. While others rush for instant answers, the mystic waits in the silence. While others are threatened by ambiguity, the mystic treats it as fertile ground. While others seek chaos, the mystic listens for patterns. And when they speak, their words carry a weight that logic alone cannot hold. Because their truth is not just thought, it is lived, felt, embodied. This is the rare power of the mystic mind. It moves slower, but deeper. It holds more, but clings to less. And in a world addicted to speed, certainty, and performance, the mystic mind becomes a living rebellion. Proof that there is another way to perceive reality, not as fragments, but as wholeness. To the ordinary mind, a bird is just a bird. A number is just a number. A dream is just imagination. But to the mystic, none of it is random. Symbols are alive. They are the alphabet of the unseen, the secret language of consciousness itself. An eagle soaring above you, it's a message of vision, freedom, perspective. A recurring number isn't coincidence. It's an echo from the deeper architecture of reality. A dream isn't meaningless chaos. It's the subconscious handing you a key in disguise. Most people dismiss these signs as superstition because they were trained to, if you can't measure it, it isn't real. But measurement is only one lens. The mystic adds another. They know symbols bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the unconscious. They slip past the gatekeepers of logic, delivering meaning where the ordinary thinker only sees noise. Does this mean the mystic believes everything blindly? Number openness is not gullibility. The mystic tests their impressions. They refine their understanding over time. They become scientists of the unseen, running experiments not only in the lab of matter, but in the laboratory of consciousness itself. They observe their dreams. They track their emotions. They decode synchronicities. They pay attention to what the ordinary mind ignores. And slowly, patterns emerge. The same archetypes that show up in myth appear in their own life. The same cycles that move through nature unfold within their own psyche. The mystic recognizes this, and with recognition comes power. Because when you learn the language of symbols, you stop mistaking chaos for coincidence. You start reading reality as a text, a living manuscript filled with metaphors designed to guide you. To the ordinary mind, this is foolishness. To the awakened mind, it is fluency, the fluency of the soul. Every civilization, every culture, every age in history has told its stories through archetypes: the hero, the sage, the trickster, the healer. These figures are older than language, older than books, older than any religion. They live inside the collective mind, the deep well of human experience, and whether you recognize them or not, they are shaping you right now. The ordinary thinker rarely sees them. They are invisible forces, guiding choices, shaping reactions, writing the script beneath awareness. But the mystic thinker, they notice. They know that archetypes are not just background noise. They are maps of the blueprints of how consciousness expresses itself across time, culture, and circumstance. Think of the hero's journey. You've seen it in myths, movies, novels, but it isn't just a story. It's a process written into the human psyche: departure, trial, return. Every time you step into the unknown, face the breakdown, rise transformed, you are walking the hero's path. Not fiction, not fantasy, but psychology playing out through your own life, the sage archetype. It isn't just the wise elder in robes. It can be a sudden knowing in your chest, a moment of silence that speaks louder than words, a conversation that arrives at the perfect time, the trickster. It isn't only a joker in myths, it's that unexpected disruption that shakes your life. A twist that forces you to see differently, to break out of the loop. Archetypes are the furniture of the soul, permanent structures, arranged differently through each life, but constant in their essence. When you're unconscious of them, they run you, you play the rescuer, the victim, the villain. Without realizing the script is ancient. But when you recognize them, you gain choice. You become both the character and the author. This is what higher thought allows. To live symbolically, to see storms as more than weather, to see them as mirrors of your own inner turbulence, to see setbacks as more than failure, to see them as the ordeal stage of your journey. When life is read only literally, it feels flat, shallow, random. But when life is read every challenge holds meaning. Every encounter carries a message. Every moment becomes part of the map. And in that recognition, chaos transforms into guidance. Noise transforms into pattern, and you transform into the mystic navigator of your own soul. The ancient alchemists spoke of turning lead into gold, but the true alchemy was never about metals. It was about the mind. It was about awareness. The ordinary thinker is ruled by raw material: anger, fear, shame, desire. These forces rise within them, and they react blindly. They repeat the same cycles, year after year, believing they are trapped. But the mystic knows emotions are not enemies. They are elements. They are the lead that can be transmuted. And awareness is the fire. Every thought, every reaction, every feeling is fuel for the inner laboratory. They work with it. When anger rises, the ordinary mind explodes outward. The mystic watches it, traces its roots, transforms it into clarity, into strength, into courage. When fear appears, the ordinary mind retreats. The mystic leans in. They breathe through the contraction, and on the other side of fear, they discover freedom. When loss arrives, the ordinary mind clings. The mystic releases. They let go of what was never truly theirs. And in that release, they create space for the new. This is the alchemy of awareness, the transmutation of raw experience into higher consciousness. And like any alchemy, it requires discipline. Not punishment, but practice, focus, consistency. The alchemist cannot refine gold in a furnace of chaos. They must tend the flame carefully. The mystic cannot refine consciousness in a mind of distraction. They must create inner stillness. That stillness becomes the crucible, meditation, breath, reflection, silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is the chamber where truth emerges. It is the space where insight arrives uninvited, where the chatter dissolves and clarity speaks. Through this alchemy, pain becomes wisdom, fear becomes fuel, loss becomes liberation, and life itself becomes the laboratory. Not something to escape, but something to refine. The mystic does not seek gold in the world. They forge it within. They carry it in their perception. And once refined, that gold cannot be stolen, broken, or lost. Every true transformation begins with a death, not the death of the body, but the death of who you thought you were. The ordinary mind fears this stage, because dissolution feels like chaos. It feels like loss. It feels like everything safe is slipping away. And in a way, it is. The old identity cracks. The beliefs you clung to dissolve. The stories you told yourself no longer make sense. The familiar map disintegrates in your hands. It feels like falling with no ground beneath you. It feels like darkness swallowing the light. It feels like you are being unmade, and the ordinary thinker panics. They resist. They fight to glue the broken pieces back together. They run back to the cage, mistaking the prison for stability. But the mystic knows dissolution is not destruction. It is preparation. You cannot pour new wine into an old vessel. You cannot create a new self inside the walls of the old one. You cannot awaken while clinging to the dream, so the old must break. The familiar must dissolve. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it feels like chaos. But in the language of alchemy, dissolution is sacred. It is the fire that melts the metal, so it can be reforged. It is the storm that tears down the house, so a stronger one can rise. It is the night that seems endless before the dawn can break. The mystic learns to endure this stage, to sit in the disorientation, to trust the collapse, because they know what looks like an ending is always a beginning. What feels like death is the birth of the true. What feels like chaos is only the field reorganizing into a higher order. The river must lose its banks before the ocean can appear. So when your life begins to crumble, do not rush to rebuild the cage. Do not mourn the loss of what was never yours. Do not confuse dissolution with failure. Instead, breathe witness. Allow, because the walls are not collapsing to bury you. They are collapsing to set you free. One of the oldest illusions the ordinary mind clings to is separation. This is me. That is you. This is mine. That is theirs. We carve lines in the sand. We build walls around identities. We divide ourselves from nature, from each other, from the very field that sustains us. And at first, it feels we say, I am independent. I am separate. I am in control. But the deeper truth is this: separation is suffering. When you believe you are cut off, you fall into loneliness. You fall into defensiveness. You fall into the endless need to prove your worth. You compete where you could cooperate. You fight where you hoard where you could share. This is the great illusion, that you are a wave disconnected from the ocean. But what is a wave without the sea? The moment you separate it, it ceases to exist. The mystic sees through this illusion. They know individuality is real, but it is not ultimate. Yes, you have a body, a personality, but beneath those layers, you are part of the same living field that breathes through everything. Science whispers this truth. Quantum physics reveals it. Particles once connected remain entangled across vast distances. Mystics have always known it. Consciousness itself is woven together in ways the senses cannot see. When you shift into conflict is no longer me versus you. It becomes a mirror, shared pain, shared fear, shared misunderstanding. Success is no longer just personal. It becomes part of the collective rising. Even solitude transforms, no longer emptiness, but communion with the whole. And here's the paradox. Seeing connection doesn't dissolve individuality. It deepens it, because you can still be yourself, but you are no longer trapped inside yourself. The mystic moves through the world like a wave that knows it is also the sea. They honor the boundaries, yes, but they also remember the unity beneath them. And once this remembrance takes root, your actions shift. Your very dreams expand. You realize that every gesture, no matter how small, is part of a larger pattern. To harm another is to harm yourself. To uplift another is to uplift yourself. The illusion of separation begins to crumble, and what emerges is not isolation, but belonging. The clock ticks. Days follow nights, years accumulate, and life appears to move in one direction, from birth to death. This is the framework you were trained to live in, and for practical purposes, it works. But here's the secret. Time is not what you think. It is not an absolute force. It is a construct of perception, a way the mind organizes experience, not a property of reality itself. Haven't you felt it? Hours vanish when you are in joy. Seconds stretch into eternity when you are in fear. Time bends to your state. It speeds up, it slows down. It is elastic. The mystic takes this further. They recognize past, present, and future are not separate locations. They are threads of a single tapestry, accessible all at once. In heightened states of awareness, they glimpse the timeless field, where events are not lined in sequence, but alive simultaneously. Modern science whispers this too. Relativity shows time shifts with speed and gravity. The deeper truth, time is not a universal clock. It is a lens. And like any lens, it can be changed. The ordinary mind clings to time because it feels safe. It says, the past is gone. The future is coming. I am trapped in the middle. But the mystic loosens this grip. They step into the timeless present. The only place power actually lives. Because when you live fully here, fear loses its ground. Fear feeds on what might happen in the future. Fear feeds on what already happened in the past. But in the now, fear dissolves. In the timeless present, you can heal the weight of yesterday. You can shape tomorrow not by control, but by aligning your frequency in this moment. The mystic calls this stepping outside the clock. And when you do, life stops being a race against time and becomes an immersion in eternity. Not eternity as endless years, but eternity as depth. A field where everything belongs, and nothing is ever truly. Awakening is not an accident. It is not luck. It is not a rare gift for the chosen few. It is an inner architecture, a blueprint, and anyone who is willing can follow it. This blueprint is not built of stone and wood. It is built of habits, mental frameworks, emotional states that shape the way you perceive reality. The first pillar of the blueprint is self-honesty. Without it, nothing changes. Most people live behind masks, not just to others, but to themselves. They edit their own thoughts, cling to comforting lies, and avoid the places they stare at their contradictions. They face their shadows. They say, if I want truth, I must first see myself clearly. And in that painful clarity, the foundation is laid. The second pillar is focus. In a world of endless distraction, focus is rare. The ordinary mind is scattered, pulled in 100, but the awakened mind trains its attention like a blade. Not obsession, but intention, sustained awareness that turns fleeting sparks into lasting fire. The third pillar is emotional mastery. Not suppression, but conscious engagement. The ordinary mind is dragged by emotion. Anger lashes out. Fear retreats. Desire blinds. But the mystic pauses, feels, listens, transforms raw emotion into refined energy, fuel for clarity, not confusion. The fourth pillar is symbolic thinking, to see life not only literally, but symbolically. The ordinary mind says, it's just a storm. The mystic asks, what in me is being cleansed? The ordinary mind says, it's just coincidence. The mystic asks, what pattern is unfolding? This way of seeing unlocks archetypal truth, connecting your personal story to the collective wisdom of humanity. And the final pillar is integration. Awakening is not escape. It is embodiment. The mystic does not float away into bliss. They bring expanded awareness into every moment. Work, relationships, decisions. Integration makes spirituality practical, a way of living, not just dreaming. This is the blueprint. Self, honesty, focus, emotional mastery, symbolism, integration. Follow these pillars, and the walls begin to fall. The map dissolves, the cage crumbles, and what remains is the vastness within you, finally revealed. In a world addicted to noise, silence feels unnatural. We fill the air with words, our minds with chatter, our days with distraction. But silence is not absence. Silence is presence. The ordinary mind fears it because in silence, the masks start to slip. The voices of conditioning fade, and what's left is the truth you've been avoiding. But the mystic embraces silence. They know silence is the crucible of transformation. It is the chamber where the deepest insights arrive, not as noise, not as argument, but as whispers that cannot be denied. In silence, the chatter of the ego begins to soften. The loops of thought lose their grip, and suddenly you notice what was always here, a stillness beneath the storm, a clarity that does not shout, a knowing that does not explain. Thoth once said, silence is not the app. The mystic uses silence as an instrument. They tune themselves to it, the way a musician tunes to pitch, because in that stillness, the field begins to speak. Symbols surface, patterns align, direction emerges, and when they act, their action carries weight, because it was born in stillness, not in the panic of noise. This is the paradox of silence. What looks empty is full. What feels still is alive. What seems quiet is the loudest teacher. If you can learn to sit in silence, even for a few minutes, you will discover that the wisdom you were chasing was already inside you, waiting for the noise to fade. Awakening is not about escaping the world. It is about returning to it deeper. Transformed. The ordinary thinker believes spirituality belongs only in temples, in meditation halls, in rituals performed on special days. But the mystic knows every moment is the temple, every breath is the ritual, every choice is the prayer. This is integration, the merging of higher perception with ordinary life, not floating away into bliss, but grounding expanded awareness into the way you live, work, love, decide. Think of it this way: a mystic doesn't just meditate in silence. They carry silence into conversations. They don't just glimpse patterns in visions. They recognize patterns in their relationships. They don't just see symbols in dreams. They decode symbols in daily events. Integration is where wisdom becomes practical. It's not about glowing in private. It's about radiating in public. It's about allowing your expanded state to shape how you move through the world. This is what makes the awakened mind powerful. It doesn't separate spirit from matter. It doesn't divide the sacred from the ordinary. It fuses them. And when you fuse them, work is no longer just survival. It becomes expression. Relationships are no longer contract, they become mirrors. Decisions are no longer mechanical, they become aligned. This is why the mystic doesn't need to preach, they embody. They live the truth so fully that others feel it in their presence. They don't impose their awakening, they demonstrate it. And here is the secret. Integration is where transformation becomes unshakable. Because if your awakening only exists on the meditation mat, it is fragile. But if your awakening follows you into traffic, into work, into conflict, into silence, then it is real. Integration is not the end of awakening. It is the proof of it. Awakening is not isolation. It is not hiding away in caves of silence, cut off from the world. True awakening deepens connection to people, to nature, to ideas, to the vast web of existence itself. But here's the paradox. The mystic connects deeply, yet never blindly, because connection without discernment and discernment without connection becomes cold detachment. The awakened mind must hold both. The mystic listens fully. They open to perspectives, to voices, to wisdom carried in unexpected places. But they do not swallow everything whole. They treat their mind like a temple. What enters, it must be examined, turned over, tested against intuition and reason alike. This is critical thinking, not as cynicism, not as arrogance, but as care. The refusal to accept an idea simply because it is repeated, endorsed, or ancient. The mystic remains open, but anchored, receptive, but rooted, and this balance is rare. Because the world trains you to choose one side, be skeptical of everything, or believe everything. Close your heart or lose your mind. But the awakened mind refuses that split. It connects with love, but filters with clarity. It questions, not to destroy. This is how the mystic can sit with others without being consumed by their illusions. This is how they can walk through the flood of information without drowning in distraction. This is how they serve, not by shouting louder, but by asking the questions that cut through confusion. And when connection and critical thinking dance together, a cycle begins. Connection brings new perspectives. Discernment refines them. That refined truth deepens the next connection. Over time, the mystic becomes both student and teacher. They draw wisdom from every encounter, and they reflect clarity back to others, not by imposing, but by embodying. And in their presence, illusions crack, truth stirs, because the greatest power of the awakened is not persuasion, it is inspiration, to live in such a way that others cannot help but wonder, what else is possible? For most of the world, success is measured by accumulation, wealth, possessions, titles, followers, applause, and purpose, reduced to chasing those same things, wrapped in language about ambition and achievement. But look closer, and you'll see how fragile this definition really is. What you gain can be lost. What you build can crumble. What others admire can be forgotten in a moment. If your purpose is built only on the outer world, you will spend your life chasing shadows, and every victory will carry the fear of being taken away. The mystic sees through this illusion. They know true purpose cannot be borrowed from culture. It cannot be handed down as a checklist. It must be discovered within. And once discovered, it becomes immune to, because purpose is not measured by what you collect, but by what you align to. Alignment with truth. Alignment with your deepest values. Alignment with the quiet inner, knowing that whispers even when the world is loud. This shift changes everything. Work is no longer about survival or applause. It becomes expression. They become mirrors of growth. Ambition is no longer about climbing ladders. It becomes stewardship of potential, the sacred use of time and energy. Impact is no longer about breadth alone. It is about depth. One genuine conversation can shift a life more than 1,000 empty performances. And here lies freedom. Because when you stop chasing society's definition of success, you are free to design a life that fits you, not one that merely impresses others. It can feel unsettling at first. Without the ready-made roadmap, you stand before an open horizon. But what looks uncertain is actually liberation, because the awakened do not ask, "How do I win the game?" They ask, "Who am I when the game dissolves?" And in that question they discover purpose, not borrowed, not imposed, but born from within. And once that purpose awakens, no failure can kill it, no success can inflate it, and no opinion can shake it, because purpose aligned with truth is unshakable. And so we arrive here, at the edge of everything you've been told you are. The walls have cracked, the map has burned, the roles have loosened, the illusions have dissolved. What remains? Not the mask, not the cage, not the identity you defended for so long. What remains is the vastness that was always there. The mystic knows this final truth. Awakening is not about becoming something new. It is about dissolving everything you are not, so what you always were can finally shine through. You are not the thoughts in your head. You are the awareness watching them. You are not the stories handed to you. You are the silence underneath them. You are not the wave pretending to be separate. And when this realization takes root, life transforms. Every breath becomes sacred. Every choice becomes deliberate. Every challenge becomes alchemy. Every connection becomes communion. Because you are no longer living inside the floor plan. You are no longer gripping the bars that were never there. You are no longer mistaking the map for the world. You are the awareness that bends beyond the walls. This is the invitation. Not to believe blindly, not to escape reality, but to embody the truth that has been whispering all along. You are not small. You are not trapped. You are not who they told you to be. You are the mystic mind, the alchemist of perception, the living paradox, the silence and the sound, the wave and the ocean. And once you remember this, the system can no longer control you, because the walls are gone. The map is gone. The prison is gone. There is only vastness. And in that vastness, you are free.